Mr. Robb, you'll have seen Mr. David Davis's evidence that he believed that too many concessions had been made. His phrase was excessive concessions, and errors have been made in the negotiations in the early days by the UK government. I'm going to ask you about that, but combine it with a question about specifically strategic errors. And he mentioned sequencing, and I'm sure you'll have seen that in the evidence that he gave. Do you agree with that view, and what's your assessment of his evidence?
So I've always been quite careful about this because A, I think it's helpful and healthy to look forward rather than back, and B, because I don't want to criticise anything that was done previously. I think that's it's never a particularly constructive thing to do. But I certainly agree with David's assessment that the process and some of the compromise on process were mistaken. I mean, I think the sequencing was one thing. I think we could see it very clearly in the joint report in December that concessions were made there. And some of the process concessions can dictate then the substantive outcomes of the negotiation. In my view, healthy negotiation is all about exercising smart pressure through providing positive proposals which create some win-win but also deliver on the UK national interest, and doing it with sufficient rapidity that the other side is under pressure, but positive and smart pressure, to come to a mutually beneficial solution. And I think partly because of the sequencing we lost that. I also think simple things like why did we concede at the outset that all the negotiations would take place in Brussels? One of the EU's big things is that we were going to be treated like a third party. So I think for that reason alone, we should have made sure there was a more equitable balance of the process, and little things like that can matter. And I think some of the fights we should have probably had early on, and I say that with great respect for the ministers that served before I joined the department, because I know they argued for that very strenuously.